Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and welcome to a man that's sitting in an office with a big sign behind him called Believe. He's sitting in an office in Portland, Oregon. He is the CEO of a company called RevenueZen. Mr. Rocky Pedden, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Mate, just before we press record, you were saying that this is your third podcast for the day, so hopefully you've got your got all of your answers really down pat now and ready to fire. But I also asked you a question before, and you said you've got a plan to be on 100 in 2026. So, mate, by the time your 2026 ends, you're going to be a either a media megastar or ready to take the microphone and do your own podcast.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully one of those two. There's probably some other avenues there as well, but yeah, that's the goal is to just learn as much as I possibly can over the next year, talk to a bunch of entrepreneurial folks, and yeah, get the message out about what we're doing and why we think it's important.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about sales leadership, go-to-market strategies, the proliferation of AI and how it's affecting organizations and particularly leaders within organizations from their decision-making perspective. But before we jump into that, always love to delve into a little bit of the past of, and this is not a seedy sort of what's your dark secrets from the past, but more a case of get some context and where you started out and what sort of led you down the path of moving into go-to-market and certainly ending up today being the CEO of RevenueZen, but also involved in a portfolio of companies. Where did it all start for you, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, I think I'm a good example of, in life, a lot of like work isn't so much about like what you know, it's more about like who you know.
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, I was brought onto the Revenue Zen team, gosh, back almost 7 years ago now by the original founder of Revenue Zen, Alex Boyd. And the reason he brought me in is because we had worked together at a previous, SaaS company in Dinero. And he was the sales leader there, and I was one of the account managers or account executives, excuse me. Um, and I think when you work with somebody, you get to know their personality and what they're capable of. And he knew that like sales for me was like an entryway into business, and
Hmm.
realistically, where my goals and aspirations have always been is in leadership of one form or another. And so when he started Revenue Zen, he and I stayed in contact, and at some point of growth, it made sense for him to bring on partners, and I was one of the people that he called, and I've been here now for, like I said, almost 7 years. And I think I transitioned really into the CEO role as Alex wanted to take a step back. That started in kind of late 2023,
Mm.
or excuse me, late 2022. And so I've been in this kind of more senior leadership role here at RevenueZen now for the majority of my time at the business. But yeah, before that, I was working in various different sales roles, marketing roles. I started my career at Enterprise Rent a Car of all places, and so I've kind of run the gamut. Sorry if you can hear that. My guy outside just started using the leaf blower, but yeah, it's been a wild ride. But I think I've learned something from each of those stops that I've had relative to sales, leadership, marketing, go to market strategy. Um, and yeah, I'm finally here, and I think probably existing right now in a leadership position and maybe the most exciting time to be in technology just
Yeah.
ever with AI. And I love talking about AI and how we're utilizing it and learning how other folks are using it too. But yeah, that's kind of my 30,000 foot view of my career.
It's really interesting, Rocky. You mentioned you've been in rental cars and now you're in technology. And you said a really interesting thing that it wasn't so much what you knew, but it was who you knew. And when you think about I guess the job market or the employment market, there are so many roles that get filled that never actually see the light of day in terms of being advertised because of the networks that people have. And if you've got a level of trust, and an important point, particularly in the world of AI, when you've got a level of trust that exists between two humans, that's a connection that is very difficult to break, but it also provides opportunities that most others would never see. So, what was it about? Like, you've gone from cars. I know you said you're interested in technology, and you mentioned also before we pressed record that you're endlessly curious. So you said, "Oh, give me a pot of coffee and some time, and I'll just tinker with stuff and work out how things work." Um, what specifically has it been about technology that has really kept you engaged and to the point now where you're leading a pretty sizable organization?
For me, it's always been about like building efficiency and better systems. Like for whatever reason, I'm just like allergic to something like being a waste of my time. Like I'm the type of person like when I move like houses, like I change my doctor and my dentist and every other person who I don't see very often, but when I do need to see them, like I want it to be like easy to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so like for me, I think that's the bridge that technology provides. It's just like this ability to ever increase like productivity, efficiency, better output, better user experience, so on and so forth. And for me, it's just about building the better car
Mm,
over time. And I think I get a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment from also working with other people and helping them fulfill whatever their career aspirations are. And
yeah.
so, like understanding that, bringing these two things together of, people management and technology management, and just driving for, not to sound like a corny commercial, but like a brighter future. Like that's really what I think it boils down to. And the purpose of tech is just to make our lives better.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, that's kind of my ethos more or less.
Nice. So let's talk about Revenue Zen, and the I guess the specific go-to-market strategy that you guys do in terms of what you do, because I want to delve into more specifically around some of the nuances and some of the principles by which you run the company, but also that's going to benefit people listening to this from a sales and sales leadership point of view. So just give us a bit of an overview in terms of the purpose that Revenue Zen exists. What does it do in the marketplace? How does it differentiate against other agencies?
Yeah, so we've historically, actually, when we first started, we were actually an SDR, fractional SDR agency.
Okay.
And 7, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, SDRs were like all the rage. Companies were hiring like entire SDR teams. But about 2 years into RevenueZen, we realized, well, we hypothesized, I should say, that the use of SDRs was going to dramatically go down over time as efficiency was built. And this was pre-AI. And I think with
Mm,
AI, that's probably even more true today than it was then. And so we pivoted into SEO, and we chose SEO because we took the stance that we believed that the world needed more good marketing. And to be successful at SEO, like you can kind of fake it for a while, but eventually the Google algorithm catches up to you and penalizes you. And so the companies who are really successful in content marketing and SEO and GEO now too are the companies who just do good marketing, and they understand who they are, they understand who their ICP is, they make their ICP the hero of all of their content. And that's just how they function. And we realized like that's what we wanted to be a part of. We wanted to be a part of producing more great marketing,
yeah.
um, and making it just a better user experience when you go to Google and you are searching for something, whether it's like a mountain bike for your 7 year old, like I just did, or a software for your business. Like having that interaction be helpful and useful and efficient, like that's what we really wanted to do. It's like that's really the crux of why we pivoted into SEO, GEO, content marketing. And
Yeah.
I would say like our biggest differentiator now is when you think about producing content, like high volume of content in particular, the old way of doing that is you would hire, a team of writers or a writer, and they would go out, do some market research, and then based off of, some keyword research and editorial calendar tinkering and building, they would produce like all of this content. And what that really meant, like essentially they were regurgitating what already existed on the internet, and then they
Hmm.
were producing it for this other brand. And even when you move into AI, like that was the big, everybody's like, well, I don't want AI content because it's regurgitated. And my response to that was always like, well, all content is kind of just regurgitated, unless you have a system in which you're purposefully avoiding that process.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do in our content creation. This is really our differentiator. And the way we do it, like this isn't like some crazy unknown like mystery. We interview people. And so when we have our clients, they have subject matter experts. We do all the SEO and GEO research. We want to understand the data. But ultimately, what makes our content stand out from other content is we actually go to those SMEs after we've built the editorial calendar, after we've built the briefs, and we ask them very specific questions about that content that pulls out their experience and their expertise, and it makes that piece of content then a one of one, a truly unique piece of content. It's not regurgitated. It's answering the questions that people are asking. It's helpful. It's useful, and it's going to perform better over the long run than what you might typically get from another agency.
And when you mentioned that, the thing that popped out to me is you said that you make the customer the hero.
Yeah,
And when you think about most marketing, and I've been in sales for 20 plus years, and sales organizations still today suffer from the we are the best of this, and therefore you need to listen to how good we are. So it's very much a push marketing type approach. Listen to how good we are. We've got the best product, the best widget, the best service, etc., etc. But the ones that can actually say, well, okay, we might have the best product, but we don't want to have to tell you that. We want to put you at the center of everything that we do and make you the hero. But we'll subliminally, and when I say subliminally, this is not an unethical thing. We'll sort of weave in the narrative, but keep the focus on the end customer, which then makes them feel, hey, this is more about me. You're actually talking to me, which increases the probability of them wanting to lean in and explore what options they've got available to them. The other thing you
yeah,
mentioned there is in the research, and I'll be interested in your take around the length of time from concept to launch in relation to when you do get the SMEs involved. Um, that makes it unique because it's their unique perspectives talking to a specific language for a specific situation, which says, "Hey, it's us," right? And what will happen is people who resonate with those type of people say, "Oh, they've got that experience, so I'm similar to them, so therefore it probably resonates with me as well."
yeah. Our whole goal when I'm selling this, the way I pitch this to our prospects is I'll say the goal of the content is for whoever your ICP is, when they land on your page and on your content, they should either be either subconsciously or consciously thinking to themselves, like, I belong here. Like this
Yeah.
is written for me. And like if your content isn't getting that level of response, then there's room for improvement. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. It just means it needs to be optimized, it needs to be changed, potentially updated, whatever the case may be. But that's our ultimate goal. And I'm not going to say that we do that with every single piece. That
Mm.
would take an enormous amount of effort, and it like the point of diminishing returns, it just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
But like for core pieces of content in particular, like you really want that to be as much of that response as you can possibly get out of it. And I do think with I think we'll find that with these content systems that we're creating, that you really can get to that like really high level piece of content more frequently and more often because technology again is going to facilitate that communication, that interview, the injection of that information into the content itself. And it's going to make the life of the salesperson like so much easier. And, like
Yeah.
I'm a big Hermosi fan. Um, and I think like aligning sales and marketing around like that philosophy of like telling people what they should be doing, but making them the hero of that process, like you find this like kind of golden ticket to win business very organically and ethically.
And that's the key thing, ethics, because when people think of sales, most people, when I say the most, the vast majority of people don't put ethics in the same conversation as sales. But I actually happen to believe that in order to be sustainably successful in selling, firstly, you've got to be a servant-based leader, right? So you're there to help, not there to sell. But it has to be based on ethics. You've got to look after what's in it for the organization, not what's in it for you. So one question I wanted to ask just on that is dealing with organizations that perhaps have been brought up in the old advertising world where they just bombard the market with saturation as much as possible, and they just think the more we throw at the market, the more we're going to get some sort of return. In terms of dealing with some of the characters within your organization, such as chief revenue officers or even chief marketing officers, has there been a shift in their attitude, particularly when you're coming in and saying, "Hey, we've got to make sure that this is not about you. You've got to make sure it's about your customer, because that's what's going to get cut through." Has there been some challenges and pushback and resistance in that process?
Yeah, I mean, there's always some people who think they have like all the answers, and oftentimes when we come across those situations, like to us, like that means they're not really in our ICP, and so like we try to stick pretty hard into our ICP, and if they don't qualify, then it's like, hey, like, look, we're not a good fit for you
Mm.
if this is the case, because ultimately, like, I don't look at the Revenue Zen team as order takers. Like, we're not just going to do whatever you tell us to do because that's what you think. Like, we're a very data informed team, and like people hire us to tell them what they should do, how they
Uh-huh.
should do it, why they should do it, and what they should expect on that once they do it, like what is the outcome going to be. And so there's definitely a lot of folks, I think in particular still, who are, like you mentioned, like blasting the market from every angle. And I think that they will still probably have some level of success depending on what industry and market they're in. But over time, I think the brands that are really going to succeed are the brands that are speaking directly to the customer, solving their problems, and ultimately those other brands. There's only so much money you can dump into an ad campaign before, like, again, like, not to overuse the term, but you hit the point of diminishing returns, and like, every dollar is netting you less and less and less. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we definitely run into those people. I would say, like, not as frequently as we used to. It definitely feels like there's a new guard, so to speak, in leadership and marketing organizations now, and they are very receptive to this idea of, the customer is the hero. All of our content should be really revolving around these personas. I think one of the coolest things about AI and content creation is the ability to create essentially standalone editorial calendars for each of your ICPs. So if you're selling to engineers and marketers and salespeople, like historically, it was hard to produce content for all of them individually. But
Mm.
today, with the technology and AI that we have, like, you can really accomplish that relatively easily. And you can start producing a lot more content, but it's hyper focused, and each piece may not get the traffic that it used to get, but the traffic is much more engaged. It's a higher quality traffic because the content is written for them and their use case. And there's a whole ecosystem of content related to them that they can then dive into and help them in their buying process and decision making.
It's a really interesting concept because often marketing organizations would have the standard metrics in terms of how many clicks do we get when we put something on a website, when we send flyers out, or how many phone calls do we make, what's the return? So a lot of them are very tangible metrics. But what you're saying is you can now have maybe a smaller volume of marketing contacts, but it now becomes a lot better in terms of the quality. And therefore, it starts to turn more into a revenue conversation that you can generate from a smaller batch than just the metrics of how many clicks do we get. And then we rely on the sales team to actually do the closing. Because
Yeah.
the other thing, and this is what I love about sales and marketing now becoming a lot closer together. If they're working symbiotically, then it should actually shorten the selling cycle. It should actually shorten the buying cycle and theoretically increase the value of your ideal customer profile.
Yeah, I have one of my wife's former bosses started his own company called Align ICP, and he was a CSM leader at a big tech company here in Portland. And he realized that the sales team was closing deals that were outside ICP. And there's all these problems associated with that. And it got to the point where he could look at a deal that came through and pull up their profile, and he knew from the start, like, how much resources this was going to take, how much more effort it was going to take to manage this client. But then there's these other, like, fallout pieces that happen. Like, when you do that, and let's say you close like an Amazon, but
Mm.
Amazon isn't your ICP. Now you might be throwing your roadmap off because you're trying to satisfy this giant client who's worth so much money. But in doing so, you're kind of screwing over all of your other ICPs who are actually the people who should be buying your software or your
Yeah.
service or whatever the case may be. And that is a massive problem. And so he set out to do essentially solve this exact problem is like, hey, understand who your ICP is. To reference Hermosi again and Dan Kennedy, I mean, they talk about, the riches are in the niches. Like, not everybody needs to sell to Amazon to be
Mm.
successful. You just need to find your niche, understand that customer profile, intimately, and then sell to them. And yeah, to your point with the sales team, like marketing should be doing like 80% of that work. And sales should just be there to answer questions, walk through demos, and really just get them to that point of like that final bump of like, yep, just sign on the dotted line. And I think a lot of sales orgs kind of think that the sales team should do more than that. And I
Mm.
think that's the disconnect in sales and marketing that I think we need to get closer together and bridge that gap and really make them probably like one team, like really working together. I remember working at several organizations where sales and marketing were like in these different corners of the room, and they were arguing about things all the time, and like they really need to be like on the ship, pointed in the same direction, and like really like pulling the R's in one motion all
Well,
together.
I spent 20 plus years in big telecommunications companies here in Australia, and there would always be this argument between sales and marketing. And sales was saying, marketing, your leads are absolutely crap. And marketing is saying, no, 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 there's nothing wrong with the leads. We've got a really shit sales team. So we're always pointing the finger. And we always used to think about, oh, we've got these MQLs, the marketing qualified leads, and they're not real until we turn them into a sales qualified lead. And I'm sitting there thinking, hey, how about you put your heads together and actually think about what is a qualified lead for our ideal customer profile, and then you can both work together. And there's less effort required. There's a higher
Right.
percentage of revenue is going to come back. It makes sense. It's common sense, but it wasn't common back then.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I think what a lot of people are scared of in that philosophy is a lower volume of leads because like
Mm,
they're marked on the number. And this is true in marketing KPIs as well, whether you're talking about sessions, impressions, organic users. And we went through this last year with a lot of our clients when AI came out. There was a big drop in traffic for a lot of our clients, and across the board and across industries and markets. And a lot of them were really concerned. And our response to that was like, yeah, like this traffic is getting eaten up by, your educational queries and informational queries are getting solved by the AI overviews directly inside of Google. So
yeah,
like the concern isn't so much about the traffic. The concern is, are you still part of that no-click environment conversation? And if you are, then like, hey, no worries. Like you won't be able to directly look at the numbers, but you'll still see it come through in the form of the conversion.
yeah,
And that's what we saw was conversion rates actually went up for the clients that were doing really good marketing, even though their traffic went down and they were making more money. But it was just a different way of thinking about it. And like you have a lot of like this whole group of people essentially being judged on these four numbers. And as soon as something comes in and disrupts the pattern of those four numbers going up and to the right, they rightfully kind of freak out.
yeah,
So that
yeah.
was definitely a learning curve for us last year.
Well, it's a bit of a paradigm shift, isn't it? And this is where, like, I guess executives with those organizations have to unlearn and say, well, the old metrics we did in 2024 are probably not the same baselines that we should be actually measuring in 2026. And you mentioned before that AI has really taken off, beginning of 2025. And you're mentioning that there were some companies that are saying, hey, when you're doing the outreach, when you're doing the SEO, when you're building content, you're not using AI, are you? Because we want this to be human. And now you're saying, hang on, companies are saying, hey, you are using AI, aren't you?
Yeah.
So can you just talk through from your perspective how you've seen the proliferation of AI and where you think it's going to continue? Because you did mention something before we press record about splitting the atom.
Yeah. Yeah. I think AI for me, and I think everybody kind of has their own journey with AI in terms of how you use it. And some people, like I was a perfect use case of like, yeah, I would jump into ChatGPT, I'd have it write some emails for me, maybe analyze some data. Um, but it wasn't like I wasn't using it for search really all that much. I occasionally will use it for search now, But then, a couple weeks ago, I started using Claude Cowork. And for me, that was like the aha light bulb moment because now I have Claude Cowork working on something right now in the background of our conversation related to updating my SOPs and building HTML files for, form intakes. And the last couple of weeks, it's really hit me where I have just essentially been like, oh, like I have two or three different AI agents right now working on my behalf. I'm doing the work of four Rockies instead of one Rocky. And like that's a really amazing feat if we think about it. And so, yeah, I think as user behavior shifts, I think 2026 will be the year where like we see a level of adoption. And the way I kind of think about it is if we go back to when the iPhone first came out and BlackBerry was first to market in that kind of segment, and they really had cornered the market. All
Mm.
of the stock traders and all those guys, they always walked around with their Blackberries. And I even remember ads from BlackBerry essentially just like, making fun of Apple. And then all of a sudden, like Apple just kind of creeps up in market share and then it hit 15% market share. And this is like historically true for a lot of products and services.
Yeah.
Once you hit that 15%, you go from like 15% to 50% like overnight. And that's exactly what happened. And obviously, we know what the history looks like. BlackBerry is out of business, and Apple
Yeah.
is one of the most profitable companies in the world, in large part because of the iPhone. And so I think AI, like 2025, was like this dipping the toe into the water of AI and testing it a little bit and be like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, I can use this for search. And there's a bunch of people who were like, yeah, but towards the end of the year, we saw people using AI less for search than what we saw in like April, June, July. I think 2026 is going to be the year where you have a bunch of people, like me and you and maybe some other people in leadership roles where they're like, oh, I can supercharge my team with this. All I have to do is build these agents or build these workflows or build these skills inside these AI tools. And all of a sudden, like the conversation is each of my reps can do the work of 10 reps. Now, like this is where I think it kind of gets scary. Do I still need a team of 20 or do I need a team of five?
Mm.
Uh, and like that's, I think, what 2026 is going to be a lot of reorganization and shuffling of like how are we actually internally deploying these tools and
Yeah.
how are we making sure that we're training our team from like a learning and development perspective, like to actually maximize their efficiency with the tool. And yeah, like we were saying before that we hit record, in 20 years time, I think we will probably look back on this period of time as the greatest technological revolution ever. Previously I was thinking like maybe on par with splitting the atom. And I think now, I think we're beyond that. I think the impact to humanity will be greater than, that scientific breakthrough. So, I mean, like, buckle up, I guess, but, enjoy the ride. That's all you can do because like it's in motion, it's going. We
Well,
can't stop.
you certainly in 2026, you can't stick your head in the sand and have the ostrich principle and hope it's just going to bypass and everything because you're going to get your head out of the sand. The world's going to be completely different. Um,
Yeah.
and certainly in the world that I work in with sales and sales leadership, it's guys, you've got to embrace it. You don't give in to the AI. And what I mean by that is you don't say, hey, write me a proposal for Revenue Zen. Here's a couple of key points, go, right? And
Right.
just believe as gospel what it throws back. Because at some point in the sales process or in the customer's buying process, you're going to have a human to human conversation. And you better know what you're talking about. So it has to be your content. What AI does, it actually frames it probably more concisely when you feed in a lot of data points and a lot of frameworks, but it can actually be a lot more relevant and a lot more pinpointed, which helps increase your level of credibility.
I 100% agree. I think, using AI as a research tool, that's what we use AI for a lot of research, but you can't just take it at face value. Hallucinations are real. You got to be
Mm,
aware of like the pitfalls of AI. And from a sales perspective, oftentimes like the thing I love, the way I really like using AI from a sales perspective is, having a conversation, having a recording, and then being able to use the AI to pull out the tidbits of the recording and then looking at that and being able to say like, okay, I need to do research on these three or four key points. or I need to pull in information from maybe proposals I've already done in the past. And I want to like bring this all together into this new document. And you
Yeah.
can tell the AI exactly what you want it to do. And then it does that mundane kind of minutia work. And then it really allows you as a salesperson or the marketing leader or whoever to really sit in a very strategic seat. And like use your brain to think about like, okay, like how can I move this forward
Mm.
instead of button pushing? And so like that's a big kind of internal like ethos is like whatever things we're doing right now that are very button pushy, like we need to optimize those and use AI. Like that's
Yeah.
where AI should fit in.
Yeah.
But anywhere where we're using strategy, like that probably still needs to be directed by a human. And again, utilizing AI to progress it and be more efficient. But anything that is like truly like, oh yeah, this is like a paper push thing. It's like, okay, like that shouldn't exist. Like the paper pusher should be the AI now. So let's figure that out.
I love that. I know you've got to call it on the hour, so I'll sort of bring this into a close shortly. As I wanted to ask you a question as a CEO of an organization, and that is, you mentioned before that you're thinking that the agency model where you can get away with $25,000 a month sort of differentiation and revenue is maybe going to be short-lived, and you're now looking at more profitability. As a CEO, looking at that and using the proliferation of AI, what are some of the thoughts you've got in terms of the people? Because a lot of people out there are thinking, well, if AI takes over a lot of these roles, what are people going to be doing? So, how do you see, I guess, the evolution of AI and the integration with the human element? Are we going to see a lot more roles that don't exist today being created because we still need humans? Or is there a sense of, you know what, we have to be conscious of what might happen over the next 12 months or 24 months?
Yeah, I think anybody who is saying something like you're not going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI, I just disagree, right? Like jobs are going to be destroyed. Like I've already seen it in marketing when we talk about writers and we don't use writers anymore.
Yeah.
Those writers didn't lose their job because they didn't know how to use AI. Most of them probably were using AI. They lost their job because I know how to use
Yeah.
AI. And so like I don't mean to say that like willy-nilly because like I think that's a serious concern from the health of an economy standpoint and like what does that future look like. I think there's going to be a lot of new job titles created, a lot of AI engineering, prompt engineering, sales engineering, implementation, things of that nature in
Yeah.
the AI universe. And I also think, and what I'm really hopeful for is I think there's going to be a lot of like smaller companies that provide like hyper targeted products or services that compete with like the big companies. And like as an example, like CRMs. Like I don't know anybody who likes Salesforce in the sense that like, like they would choose to use it if they had other options that were good. And like having looked at a bunch of Salesforce instances of our clients, I have never come across a Salesforce instance that is like clean and easy to read and easy to get information out of. They're all a mess. They're all jumbled. It's a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And the same is true for HubSpot for the most part. They're
Yeah.
like these repositories of garbage. And now, like, we switched our CRM to a company called Clarify, and it's like purpose built. It's an AI forward CRM system. Um, and I think what we're going to find is there's going to be more like CRMs built for insert persona here,
Yeah.
engineering teams, CRMs built for product teams.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's where you might be able to find more jobs potentially is in those smaller companies and having more competition, which I think would be really good for the economy as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, but I'd be lying if I said that, oh, it's all going to be honky dory and everybody's going to come out of this unscathed and in better position because I just like if we're building efficiency by nature and we're building efficiency at a greater speed than the economy is growing, which I think is a given right now,
Mm.
then that means that there's going to be less jobs. And so like I think from a policy political standpoint, like that would be a primary concern for me.
Yeah.
As a CEO running a business, I have a responsibility to like press forward. Because if I don't, my business is gonna like we won't
That's
survive.
it.
And so it is a really interesting position to be in though, because like morally and ethically, like how do you approach this? And like
Mm.
those rules haven't been written. So we'll see.
Well, I think whatever happens, we've got to approach it with a level of curiosity, which you've mentioned a few times, but also having a growth mindset that everything happens for a reason, and there's always going to be a solution. So the world has, with through all the big industrial revolution, the information age, and all that sort of stuff, we've always found a way to adapt and work with it. So I tend to take more of an approach of, hey, it's going to be good. We've got to embrace the good and not look at it as a thing to be resisted. So get on board.
I agree. I'm a definitely in general a tech optimist, and I think in the aggregate, AI will be a net benefit, and I think there will be a period of adjustment.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, every technological revolution, not only did we figure it out, but it improved quality of life for
Mm.
humans in general.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that will probably be true here too. But certainly something to be mindful of, and it's also it's a technology unlike any other technology we've ever developed.
Yeah.
So be mindful of that. But all in, like I'm very optimistic. I think it's going to do good things for most people, and yeah, I'm excited to. I mean, I'm excited to be a part of it, frankly.
Awesome, mate. That I was just looking at that believe sign behind you. There, you're obviously a Ted Lasso fan, right?
Oh, huge Ted Lasso fan.
There you
Yeah,
go. The
yeah.
fourth series is coming out soon, which I cannot wait. I cannot
Me
wait.
neither. Like I want to say like the Ted Lasso is like my COVID reprieve. Like it was the thing that like kept me like I looked forward to it. Um, like personally, like my mom actually went through, unfortunately, she went through a cancer treatment series a couple years ago, and she had never seen Ted Lasso, and I was like, oh, like and she was living with us at the time, and I was like,
Yeah.
you like gotta watch this. Like this is
Yeah.
gonna like give you good feels and good vibes. Like this is a good thing to engage with when you're going through cancer treatment. So yeah, I love the show. I love the optimism, the energy. So yeah, I'm looking forward
Love
to
it.
season.
Love it, mate.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm conscious you got to get on a sales call. Greatly appreciate you being on the podcast and love the conversation. For people listening that'd like to know more about you and certainly connect with you, Rocky, where's the best place for them to do that, my friend?
LinkedIn's the best place. I'm on there a lot. I'm connecting with people all the time. I'm working to get more content out there. That's one of my priorities this year is just a lot more content. But yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
Perfect, mate. Thank you so much again, and best of luck as you continue to evolve the business, but also best of luck on your odyssey to be guests on 100 podcasts this year. I reckon you could probably do more than that, just saying, because this was the third today.
Yeah, that's the third day. It's a full day of podcasts. So yeah,
Good on you, mate. Appreciate it.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.